Hello, everybody. We're here with another session for the Brush Sauce Theater Critiques. I'm joined by Jess today. Thank you for joining me. We couldn't get a hold of Adam. I guess he was just busy. We're sorry he can't make it here. But yeah, the theme was Spirit Bridge.
Yeah, we got so many cool submissions. We had a
Yes.
really hard time getting it down to these.
Without Adam keeping the piece here, we were kind of neck and neck fighting for a lot of these ones, and we had to both make some compromises. This is what got
Tough
picked.
choices.
With that said, if yours didn't get chosen, please don't take it personally. A lot of us wanted them in there, so we're going with these. We're going to get a little bit of variety. A lot of these are actually very similar thematically, of course. So we try to get a little bit of variety in here. So we're just going to go in no particular order. These are arranged randomly. We'll go, from top to bottom and stuff. So Yara, thank you for your submission again. This is lovely. I like the simplistic nature of this. I like the graphic shapes as well. It's just very bold, maybe almost a little too bold. I'd want to maybe see like a little bit more separation between this piece and this piece, or even this. It's almost like too night and day between what's light is light and what's dark is very, very dark. How do you feel about
Yeah,
that?
I was kind of feeling the same way. Like the boy kind of gets lost. The tree he's standing in front of kind of gets lost. And I wonder if there's a way to bring in some like cloudy light effects, kind of framing the boy a little bit more and separating the tree from the dark background. And just breaking up some of those dark shapes a little bit more. But it is really lovely. Like the impact of it is really striking. As soon as you look at it, it like catches your eye and really pulls you in.
Yeah, I'm gonna just force in a little bit of color and stuff in here just to keep that separation going a little bit. We can give this guy a little bit of glow too, and see. I think if we pull things a little bit more back like that, then we can get to an area here like the tree, and if we erase right back into there, see, we can get that full range of that value to really kind of come forward.
And then it actually pulls the eye down towards him because that's where the true contrast is in the image instead of the whole image being blown out to dark.
Yes. All right.
And I was actually thinking like where the boy is standing, like behind him, to have a little bit of like fog or atmosphere breaking up that edge in front of him. Because right now you've got this strong vertical line that's separating him from the creature. And with just a little bit of fog, you can actually visually link those a little bit more and not have that hard line separating them.
I was thinking that as well, actually. So at least we're on the same page somewhere today.
Jeez.
Right here, right? Like just bringing in.
Yeah, and I would actually have it go behind the tree, not in front of the tree.
That's what I'm doing.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There we go. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm dragging.
You're doing good.
All right, and then here we go. Just kind of playing with that a little bit, just to kind of embed it into the picture, and then.
Oh no, I actually mean like behind the boy, like towards the background where that line is of that background plant shape. So like the boy's standing in front of fog.
That's what I was. All right, I got turned around like this.
It's okay. It's okay.
Like this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. A little bit of separation. Okay. Good. Little bit of tweaking there. Now we're in agreement. So what I was thinking with this is a glowing, creature. But I was thinking, should there be any, since it's emitting, right? Should there be any of that happening underneath, the light affecting the underside of that bridge and stuff is kind of where I am,
yeah,
with
you
that
can
next.
get a lot of pretty textures under there where the leaves are like picking up the little flecks of light and stuff, and then just reverse where the dark is on that shape, so the outer areas would be darker and the inner areas would be lighter.
See, that is really easy to kind of pick up there. So I'm also thinking too, just squeezing down that range quite a bit on there as well can also help just a little bit, just darkening that up, and then that way too, to make a glowing effect, we can also start to kind of play that up. Whatever color you choose, whether it's completely green, whether you want to bake in a little bit of that blue to it, you can really give this a nice sort of feel to it, either way, that you can add. It's just like kind of adding to it a little bit, and then of course underneath there You can
Yeah.
illuminate.
Oh, look at all those details that came out when you started doing that. I couldn't see any of that
Yeah,
before.
it's magic. So something like that. But overall, this is, and then of course you probably see like getting some of those shapes, happening. Like you already had the reflection, which is really great. Just kind of continuing that, just getting a little bit of deeper colors in there. But yeah, this is great. It's just kind of pushing things just a little bit. Like you get a little more detail up in this tree. It's a little simple, but yeah, otherwise very very
Yeah.
nice.
It's very charming and beautiful. I think you have a really strong image. I think it just needs to get pushed a little bit to unify it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Fine. All right. So this is still looking really good. I still think it's working for the most part. You got some really great details in there. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
is it
And we've
too
been seeing her work on this in the hangout
the
chat
Monday
for
hangout,
weeks now.
folks? You guys should stop by.
Yeah.
This though, it feels like we still need a bit more separation between. It's like it goes from very blue to everything, I guess, fairly orange. I don't know, with maybe separating out. See this chunk of it still, and knocking that back. I don't know. I just kind of want to play with this, which I know we don't really have the time for, because I know there's a solution in here somewhere, but sometimes they don't jump out at me as quickly as they do.
Yeah. I'm inclined to think this would be better as a
Vertical.
portrait painting
Yeah.
rather than a landscape, because I really think that all of your interesting stuff is happening on one side of the canvas. And even the way that the spirit bridge, the whole, empty side of the canvas, that bridge gets very flat and not very visually interesting. But then the other parts of the image are so dynamic and so many interesting shapes that I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it would be better if you cut off that side in general.
Amputate it.
It's true. But that also gives you a little more room to like work on curving the bridge around towards the viewer, or just
Yeah.
getting a little more space up in the sky above the figure.
Yeah, see, like, something even like that. Like, I don't know how far to crop it out, but see, even like that, and then honestly
And
getting
then
like
just
a
take
little.
it up and down a little tiny bit, and yeah.
Like, that is quite a bit better. This just, it's too disconnected, I think, as a whole picture, still. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and
not interesting enough to to where it's worth keeping.
I think it might be one of those cases of just like falling in love with some of the stuff you've painted over there. Because there is some beautiful painterly stuff happening in the sand, but it's not strengthening the painting as a whole.
So yeah, I would actually tone down like a lot of the actual direct light, in there. Have that direct light, sure. Do like a Chris Ron sort of aesthetic, right? Where it's like coming across there, hitting the character, right? Yada yada yada. That's what he does. Nice golden, soft, warm lighting that you could bake some bread on, right? Just kind of hitting that, and then hitting the character. Keep all that in shadow, but then like again, the blue should be illuminating. At least it feels like it should, like everything.
Especially like the underside of the character, like
Yep.
the underlighting of the pants and legs and stuff is all warm, when that would be cool.
Like getting like traces of that. You gotta probably play with, as you know, a handful of the various blending modes to get the most, out of this. But yeah, like okay, I'm gonna just do normal brushing for now, because not gonna play with that. All right, so a little bit of that and a little bit, right? But you'll see that in there on a lot of the sides of these. It's a very, feather that out the further it goes. Just kind of pull back on it. But I do think that would see, like, this is very warm here. That should all be very very cool, and then
Yeah.
transition it with a little bit more neutral greens and stuff into the darker warms that it is.
And then I think also just like with this new composition, it really opens it up to a little bit more of an S curve of that bridge, which is just more visually interesting than just the flat straight shape.
Mm-hmm.
To lead the eye up into the canvas and break up the bottom of the canvas in a more interesting way.
Yep. That'll look sweet. And you gotta add some stars or something back there, some magic.
Yeah, I have that sky kind of like get darker as it comes
Yeah,
up.
I think this would
Like
be a
frame
great piece overall.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and like some of the lighting effects that you have around the character are really beautiful. The spirit bridge actually does really read as like an ethereal plane made up of these spirit shapes. So I think that was really effective. It's just some compositional and lighting choices.
See, I'm getting that the contrast needs to get kind of back into a lot of these areas. I'm just scribbling, kind of like their shapes overall, but it'll really help balance everything, kind of full swing once all that is in order. But yeah, this is still, overall a really nice. You see, that's too dark and cool, but see, like this color for right there, and then you got the shadow and stuff. And then see, watch that shape. I'd probably do, if it's bricks that are broken, maybe kind of work that a little bit more. But yeah, overall very, very, very cool.
Definitely.
All right, Rithra. I like this. This is really thematically on point, which charms the heck out of me.
Yeah, it's very endearing. I think for me, the first thing I notice is just the overwhelm of that teal green color.
Yeah. This white.
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit of just like it all blurs together because there's no real temperature shifts.
Mm-hmm. And I don't there's not like an immediate quick fix for that. I would probably just go in by, darkening some of those shadows and then pulling.
I think for me, the first thing I would do is go into color balance and like just look at, okay, do I want the lights to go warm, or do I want the lights? If you go to the adjustment thing for the color balance, you can pull. You could go to highlights and pull those towards a warm range. So you could put more yellows into it, or.
You know what I would do?
Because if you go cool on the highlights, then you're going to have to warm up the shadows, and I think that might be harder. So I'd be inclined to warm up the lights.
Yeah, well, that works too. I was gonna say like make a lot of the environment pretty cool, and then just bring in. Yeah, I was gonna do it the reverse way, where I was gonna warm up some of the shadows, but either or.
Yeah, you could go either way. It just there should be a temperature shift, and then in the midtones you can push whichever one you want to have dominance, like the cool or the light, the cool or the warm.
This is another good way to do this too. Is pick a mid value right in it like this, narrow up. Right, see like that, this area is a lot of where your neutrals and transitions should be. So you could essentially just even take saturation out of that area, and that'll kind of help a little bit. And then you could actually go back in from there, like color balance, and then add in a little bit more. Make it like a warmer sort of green, like that. And then we could go into the shadow range, right? And then this is one solution for this. And then just add in cools, like this way. See this? So it's kind of like bringing out that natural kind of transition, and then you have like a really great setup for bringing in more of this kind of this cooler kind of light. And just do a little bit of blue, like you can just almost like painting, with a lot of this atmosphere. So see if I go to like light in or literally anything like that, and if you drop it in, I think I'm selected on a weird. What is this doing? 50%. Okay.
Sure. It's like
there we go. Yeah, and then kind of pulling that out, and essentially you gotta just erase it. It was just acting like really funny for a while, and I just have to make do of it. But you're just getting like a little bit of that light in, and then essentially. Go.
It starts making those teal colors and stuff that you have in there more meaningful, because they're not all over the entire painting, and you can actually use them to pull the eye back to that town or cityscape back there.
And have the blues and stuff be cool, and then have these greens. You could have the greens lean, like particularly down here into the warmer range, which will also kind of balance. So you're just kind of selecting that whole area. I think the easiest and dirtiest way to do something like this, maybe just get overlay and go to a warmer green like that, right? And then get your airbrush. Airbrush, okay, it's a 9. Okay, it didn't want to get larger. See, and then like slightly go in and just warm up a little bit of those greens in there. Could give it this very ethereal, sort of look. But that's all we're doing, is we're making these subtle temperature shifts so it doesn't feel monochromatic. And I think that'll help a lot. So see, like again with this, if this is warmer kind of light coming in, you could still select, see like that range where it gets really blasted out, with the exposure, and do something very similarly, right? Get a green or a warm green, and just bake in some nice.
Or even to go into some of the yellows and orange, because you have her carrying this orange lantern, and there's sort of this feeling of like her and the lantern. The real world is kind of this warm orangey color, and the ethereal world is kind of this, cyan, blue, green range.
Yeah.
And so you could kind of play that up with having a little bit more of the warm light, and then when she's going into the shadow, she's kind of like crossing over into a different realm.
So do you think slamming in blue across the whole background and then overlaying it and then erasing it in some places to say, hey, this is where there's like an actual kind of spirit place. So I don't know, like there's a lot of ways you can kind of play that up.
I think the contrast does help, like having the warm and cool. But I feel like the whole picture already is so cool that it's more a matter of just picking some places to pull the warm in instead of pushing the cool even further. Yeah. But yeah, that's already looking more dynamic. The colors are interesting.
Thank you for your feedback on that. But yeah, I think, like even getting, I'm not going to get into it here, but like getting some color that's different and separated with the spirits, like they need some kind of subtle shift, and we'll probably be going that, a lot.
That already helps too.
They look like they're glowing. That's kind of the problem with a lot of this stuff, is they're all of them are emitting light, and seldom do they actually do feel like that. Okay, so let's go with Claire's stuff. Claire, your stuff's getting very recognizable in this in this area here.
I think this one is really charming. It has a really fun, like playful quality to it, and light, a sense of, I don't know, like for a lot of the spirit ones, it's kind of more mysterious and dark, and this one just kind of has this joyful feeling that I like to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some beautiful textures in there, like the little brush marks for the grass and stuff are really nice. Yeah, I think you have a really nice sense of like shape design and mark making.
You're sugarcoating a lot, Jess. If you had to fix one big thing with this, what's it gonna be?
Honestly, my eye is getting caught between that big tree trunk, and then the two figure groups, like the dark figure at the bottom and the light figures on the top.
Yeah. That
shape of the tree is really cutting the picture in half.
Do you say like this one, the horizontal? So would you lean that to the top or to the bottom more?
Or curve it more. I feel like I want to see some overlap, like maybe so that it overlaps that bunny on the bottom, so that it's not just this like hard line that's separating two of the focal points of the picture.
I agree.
And then actually the shape of the way that the tree opens up, I find very visually distracting, because it's unexpected and unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that line points right to it, it almost commands as much attention as the white bunnies and the dark bunny.
Yeah. Again, that's a tough call, a tough choice to make, because it is here. It's in the center. Maybe making this smaller, or because like it seems like the picture is pretty much about this, right? So like maybe keeping as much of that, into play as possible, and then shifting elements around it, might be the best solution. But yeah, it's hard because like if you divide up the composition and stuff and really get nitpicky with things, like yeah, sure, like this works, but then like these are here, but they're kind of all in a line anyway, and the tree is on this side, which means there is nothing going on, over here. And I think you either make this like part of the shape in this area, like maybe they're going to meet all their friends, but like having this be a singular entity, I think is what is kind of holding it back a little. So right, like getting the atmosphere in there. Okay, here's the tree, here's like the line, like maybe just making, oh my god, which mode am I on? I'm on overlay. Right, like maybe just making a bunch of these, more of like a thing, that way it won't, and then you can overlap all of these little guys, you get a bunch of them, And then,
another thought too would be to take the two white bunnies and shift them to the other side of the canvas, so then they're kind of in front of a little bit more of those dark shapes. Like I would just lasso them out and them, so then they're more of like on a third line rather than in the center. And it also looks like the bunnies that are down in the foreground are looking towards them instead of off into space.
And then get this, you can have more of these little guys, you know, kind of, see, they're kind of like light and white, right? But like having more of the light ones, like really tiny over here, because like they're like the spirits kind of crossing over. So you're building a narrative up with this, which helps.
And
so
it makes that side more interesting as well. It becomes more visually interesting because you have these small shapes that aren't really anywhere else in the picture.
And that's what it's about, getting your idea across, but finding a ways that it visually feels very, very balanced, you know, as a whole. And I think from there, what I would say personally, because this is definitely one that Jess fought for, I would clean up some of this either way. There's very expressive styles, sure, that can work, but a lot of this does feel a little too chaotic for its own good. Like a lot of this is hard to kind of discern, like where it's overlapping, where the forms are. Like if you could just simplify a lot of this and then be expressive within the shapes, I do think that'll help it out, you know, quite a bit. You know, just really help figure out the form, and the form will establish the depth. And then with these guys, like Jess was saying, I would definitely continue vignetting them with some darker shape, you know, behind them. Add some kind of tree element, you know, whether it's, you know, green or pink or whatever it is, but you got to like make it a little bit darker, I think, behind these guys, because I couldn't tell they were even there originally, because it's just like light on light, you know. So just create that separation, you know, with them, and I definitely think that could help overall. And then
and again, like reworking the shape of that tree that they're walking across on, so it's a
little fugly, right?
Yeah, it's like it gets too skinny in the background and it gets too
big and it's
visually dominant right there at the end.
Yeah, it's distracting.
You can, with a tree, you can make it any shape. You can have it curved down and wrap back around. You could have it overlap with the dark bunnies that are in the front. Use it to control where you want the eye to go through the picture instead of just be stuck with this shape that cuts the painting in half.
Yeah.
It could arch around where those bunnies are walking across it and then arch back down. It doesn't have to be a straight shape.
But yeah, just moving some of them, and I mean, if your style, like this is your style, I'm not going to tell you to change your styles, but depending on where you want this to go, you know, where your market is and what you want to do, maybe cleaning up, you know, some of that wouldn't, I don't think it would hurt it at all, and it's something I'd consider.
Yeah, this feels really whimsical to me. Like it would be really good in illustrating books.
Okay, just keep that depth going. I got a little bit of green in there, but this is, you know, it's quite nice.
And I think another thing too that really I felt very compelling about this image was the color choices. I think that you did some really cool things with the warm orange light and then the purple shadows, but then also like balancing it with like some lighter cool shapes that kind of bridge between the two. Yeah, I think there's some really pretty color choices in here.
What if I would, just an idea is like, but you can like bring in some darker areas like that, but then also
that helps vignette it.
But it also, like, you can add in, like, just make that like a visual waterfall, so you're like cutting the depth a little as well. So like, oh my god, why am I on multiply still? The brush settings. So yeah, I think I want to be up here, but you know, just adding in, like, okay, here's a waterfall kind of going into there. Just don't make it distracting, you know, just try to keep it as natural, you know, as you can be. It's the water flowing down, or make it just go all the way down, you know, so you're even simplifying, you know, the shape even more. And then you could even, you know, in a few instances add in, you know, more of that as it's, you know, it's just something to consider. Like, I don't think overcomplicating it like that, but just trying to simplify, again, the overall shapes with this. See, like, this can all be one shape coming down, or this can overlay, you know, with that. It just simplifies a lot of it, which is
do think darkening that bottom area of the image in general does help push the eye up.
Regardless of what direction you go in. That is definitely something that you could consider. Yeah, there you go. And it's because, like, it's almost like I kind of read it that there was other waterfalls, see, like in the background. Depends how magical you want this, you know, or how cheesy. You know, sometimes it's good to play up a little bit of that cheese and just simplify and, you know, build this nice little setting here. But yeah, very lovely. Let's move on. All right, so down. All right, Malt.
I love this piece.
Yeah, this is great. Really great rendering here. Really creative.
Yeah.
Like it just makes you think, right?
I think the first thing that stood out to me was the asymmetry of the fish is a little too much, a little too distracting. I keep feeling like I want some sort of counterweight to the fish on the other side. Like it feels like almost like tacked on. It doesn't feel part of the image design because
Maybe
it's
like
so
another
obvious.
fish, a smaller one,
Yeah,
like
that's what I was thinking.
here.
Like yeah, like something curving around lower,
Just
so it doesn't feel so out of place.
and that way you'll still make it feel ultimately asymmetrical. This
Yeah, it doesn't have to like wrap around her head the same way, but I feel like there should be something else in there that mirrors it.
See, like I feel like with this too, that given that this is, I think it's a flat surface, having all of this be like darker, should be a thing, because the light isn't gonna, it's not wrapping around a form, right?
Hmm.
And then do it something like this where you have like all of, oh come on, nothing's working with me here, right? So this is all in shadow as well, because this is all in the cast shadow, of that, and then you can actually probably pull that light out, if you play your cards right. I like
Yeah,
that.
in the middle to have that a little
Yep.
more
And
luminous.
then even now, see, doing this a little bit more gracefully than I'm going to display is the trick. But like these could be illuminated. Like the inside of this, can be illuminated, and probably see like you're gonna have like the shapes of these, and then that's gonna eventually, right? That's gonna fade out. You're gonna have a cast shadow. Basically, you want to see the cast shadow of that figure. So just bringing up, right, the shapes of these. Just pretend they're all beautifully painted mixed stones, right? And then so you get the light kind of coming. It's emitting out from there again. Let's get a little more blue. What am I on screen? That's why it looks like. That's why it looks like hell. Screen will
Aw.
do that. But just playing up a little more. Yeah, I like that blue. Yeah, see, and then that's gonna come down and out. I'm just gonna blend that. Oh, come on. Here we go. Any other ideas? I'm just going to continue to fuss with this. See, that should be a nice gradual transition, either way. That way you can get, right, the shadow, of the figure there, and then also get in there and, highlight them, really, really nicely. It's just a lot better brushwork than I'm making
Yeah,
kind of happen there.
I think it's a really good point though, and I think that will help because that should really pull the eye in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and it's a small detail, but the very bottom of the canvas, I feel like things get a lot weaker.
Yeah.
Where you have the stones coming off the bottom of the canvas, where you have like her dress behind the disc coming off the bottom of the canvas, the colors get muddy, the shapes get muddy, and a lot of the beautiful design that went into like other parts of the painting, towards the bottom, it all feels kind of just like these
A little inconsistent, right?
misshapen clay. Yeah. So just because it's getting to the bottom of the painting or it's not a focal area, I would still say that you'd want those shapes to be designed nicely and the colors to be chosen with care.
Yeah, like you could even really stagnate out some of the perspective stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
dragging that up, scaling some of that up too.
Yeah.
Not distort, but I wanted skew. To really kind of play with that perspective and have these shapes kind of even overlap, right? So again, color and rendering aside, but like you can have a good mixture of these and right have them all overlap. Still very asymmetrically. Like with the rest of your thing, and have these pieces, kind of gradually just get tinier and tinier and just more overlaps.
Yeah, because I feel like there was so much care put into like the design of the hair and the top of the girl's head where it dissolves into light, or the fish, even the kind of foliage things around her. Like all that stuff is designed in such an interesting and unexpected way, but then the rocks feel very generic and the shape is just this straight line. So breaking it up and making this interesting shape that leads into the canvas, I think will be much more consistent with the rest of the image.
Would you play with any of the forms, on the top surface of the head, kind of like I'm poorly showing here, just to get like a little bit, more out of those? Or
I don't know. I almost think that some of the uncanniness
Yeah,
comes from the lack of facial features up there.
maybe just like
And
on
it
the
would be really hard, I
nose.
think, to walk that line of implying it without putting it in.
Yeah, maybe just like the top of the nose to get the nose to pop, and then pretty much leave the cheeks.
Hmm.
Yeah, but this is wild. This is psychedelic. It's really cool.
Yeah, really cool painting. This was one we both looked at and we're like, yeah, we gotta have this one.
Like, it's so unexpected. I think that's what's great about it.
But I definitely would say you need another fish in there somewhere, like counterbalancing the one, because otherwise it just reads as like this strange shape growing off the side of her head.
Back into a sir. So I think we were talking about this one when we were choosing. Like visually and thematically, it's really on point. And a lot of the drawing itself is really good, but I think for me the weakest part of this is actually in some of the painting. It feels very rough and fairly choppy for what it seems like you're definitely capable of when I see some of the clarity really kind of coming through. And it also is probably a lot, I don't know the intention, but it seems like you could definitely get a lot more depth in there, because there's, whether you're going from the foreground to the midground to the background, there's no real kind of shifts in light or value. It's all hovering in the same 10%, like right over here, like it, see, like as I drag it across, and therefore with that you are compromising a bunch of depth. Now, like, let's say if you wanted to knock back that entire forest, like you could and just keep that pretty dark. You don't have to make that lighter, but like as a shape, maybe like all of that should feel really kind of compressed, and then you could bring in the light for the mid-tone range, right? So like just going a bit further, right, with the darks, and then where you have
that adds so much mood to the piece as well.
Yep. And where you have the midtones, so you continue, like, warm those, or bring those up rather, like underneath the branches, and again these immediate trees, you can lighten those up, and then just have the back be the darkest piece, something like that, because you have this nice case here that you can do this awesome bounce lighting and all these other mid-tone. See, it's very mid in terms of like the value scale. It's like 50, 40, 45 to 65%. You can really get away with, and maybe even having those be a little bit more blue, and really play up the colors with some of those near these spirits and stuff toward the not right there, but see,
and it almost creates a new world inside of there that's not outside.
Yes.
The light is.
Yeah, see, it's like these areas in particularly, like a lot of these shadow shapes are just super kind of choppy for me, and I think just kind of cleaning them up and then getting in there with some really tight brush work. Because there's a lot of people that paint trees really, really well. I'm not usually one of them. I don't have the patience for it. But when you do, like, they should feel very three-dimensional, and you can continue to push some of these colors. See, like that, you could probably squeeze up a little more like this, and then that way you can emphasize the bounce light underneath there. Just a bit. Just a bit more. So like just having some of that light there, and maybe some of the top forms. See, like maybe if you don't have direct light on them, like for the top shape in here, just go like a little lighter, a little cooler, and then that way it can just be kind of like a fill. See, like something like that on the tops of some of those. Yeah, it's a tricky thing to balance. And then maybe bringing, what do you think about just lightening up the entire foreground? Just keep the dark back there. I was
gonna say, it's like, I do like the control. Like, I like how you've kept the contrast low where the figure is, so you have controlled that, like, she's not the main focal point that spirit box is. But I think that there is some room for subtlety in there where you could bring a little bit more warmth and feeling of light moving around the scene without blowing out the contrast around her.
So and then another. Do you think, one sec, pick your brain, do you think just adding any highlights in or around, like on that character is worth it at all, or just, what do you think?
I think bringing in some little bits of like green, maybe, or like where if she's silhouetted, especially like where her hand is,
then play up the
like
silhouette,
looking towards the thing. But I wouldn't blow it all out. I would just have little flecks. Yeah.
You got to do that.
Just enough to make it. And that was the other thing that really caught my attention about this piece, was the lack of textures.
Yes.
You have a lot of just big marks, which you do have some beautiful shape designs. Like the shape of the figure is very visually interesting. You've broken up the negative space in really interesting ways. But there's sometimes you need some of the crunchy detail. You need some differentiating of textures. Like the water, I could barely even tell
Yep.
was water
The water
because
needs a lot of work in my.
it's
It's
it's the same texture as the rocks, which also happen to be the same texture as the foliage and grass around her, and even the trunks of the trees. So really playing with the different types of marks that could convey information about what the surface is made of could add a lot to this piece. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Just a little bit.
it needs a little bit of that play, like just neutralizing that, just to even poke, that shirt out just a bit further, and then like just you need to get references, really good references of rivers and streams, because it's definitely like a huge part, of the image into the painting, and it feels really unfinished.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't even feel like water. I had to look at this picture several times before I realized it was supposed to be water.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna get in there and paint all that now, but yeah, you gotta get the reference out and the streams out. It's like there's parts of them that are very, very, dark. There's parts that are, really contrasty. There should be reflections. There should be refractions. There should be, move. Like that's kind of like a movement line, but it also doesn't feel like it. There's like a lot of things at play here.
Or even the reflection of the fox. Like the fox isn't reflected in the water at all, and so it's like, I'm curious, like you could make different choices. Like, is the reflection exactly the same as what we see, like with the fox part and the spirit part? Or is the reflection all fox or all spirit? So you can add more storytelling in with the reflection as well, since this is already sort of a, like, not seeing what you believe sort of image.
Because like even in like the shadow parts of the water that are, usually pretty dark, you'll see some blue light start to fill in. I'm not going to go further with that. I could be here for an hour having fun tweaking this and then finding references, but you need the contrast, you need the reflections, and then the lighter stones and the light, they'll get blasted out to like a greenish, yellow, because it's really shallow. You'll see the mud, and then there's everything in the shadows. But yeah, that definitely needs a bunch. All right, so just keep going with it.
Quick tangent note is her knee and that rock. I would design that shape a little better so it doesn't
just
butt up
separate
against
it.
each other.
Just separate it.
But this
Very
is a
nice.
really cool piece. Really creative interpretation, I think, of the idea.
All right. So, yeah, if you type in like river or stream painting on Pinterest or something, and find like a really good, academic painting of one, you'll see what we're referring to. All right. So whose was this? This was
That's cool.
Nicandra. Yeah, this is really cool. I think the biggest weaknesses with this one is having a blue focal point on a blue background.
Mm-hmm.
You could go really dark, right?
With all the textures. Mm-hmm.
You could go really dark like we just did to play that against each other, or simply kind of switch things up somewhere else. And I don't know if there's like an easier... I think that's probably the easiest solution, because this is a light object, so you'd want to go dark, darker behind there, maybe even, warm it up just to or neutralize it, just to have that separation. Because they're kind of like the same
Looks
blue.
like they've got like yellow light, so I would assume it will cool the shadows down. But I feel like this painting, the value structure is a little too checkerboardy. Like my eyes kind of jumping all over the place.
Like this. We don't need to see that. The light, I think, hitting the back.
Yeah,
there.
or like the light on the bridge is actually lighter than the spirit, like that's supposed to be like kind of luminescent and stuff. So you get these like weird pops of light in areas that you don't need to draw attention to. And then like these stark shadows that almost go to black.
See, like I'd have it like a little bit more of a neutral, warm, yellowy green in the back, just to play up that sunlight. Because either way, if you drop or you bring in kind of sunlight coming down, you can justify having like these warm, warmer visual areas, like that, and that'll through contrast really push the blue spirit, out from there. But like, see, we're shifting to it's not even like a warm color, but it's a warm neutral, and that'll be enough to really pull that character a lot further. Having the background kind of made up of tones like that.
I'm also noticing these very intrusive vertical shapes. So in the
Yes,
background, in
the
front
elephant in
of
the
the
room.
shrine, there's that like hard dark shape that's kind of cutting in, tangenting with the side of the shrine, and then cutting in an awkward way. And then another one in the foreground that's just like this
Do you
like
think
side of the
do you
picture
think
doesn't matter.
that for me is like too much?
Yeah. And
This
so
and like this, yeah, it's all a lot.
yeah, it's a lot of lines. So I would say if that's like some sort of tree shape, like I would sculpt it a little more to lead the eye in towards the figure without making this really
And
awkward
lose this
vertical
one
shape.
either way. Like
Yeah,
regardless of what I would
like
do
just
with this
open that
painting,
up.
this is like I'd switch the values. This is the second thing I would do is like lose, like all of this tree. It's just not doing anything for this picture. Just like
Yeah.
needs to
Yeah.
not exist here. Now, let's say more superficially what I would probably try to do, because this is a little bit much for me to like kind of like distracting. I would probably I'd push it further back. Like I'd extend the bridge, like make it a really long bridge, maybe if that's even possible. Which that would take a little bit of work, and I don't like usually recommending this many changes, but I'd set this back, quite a bit, way back there, and almost have like the bridge. I'll draw this out so I can hopefully pitch it to you, right? Like if this is the top, right? Like I'd have this kind of coming down, like some kind of shape, like that. Like it's kind of, what I mean? It's doing a thing where these we're coming up, and then it's coming down, and then it's back up, and then there's the edge of the forest, and then you have like the swing, like something like that, like, or it's just kind of going upwards a bit, like we're on the sag end of that bridge, and then that'll create a lot more separation. But again, that's a ton of work. I'm just saying, like, maybe in a perfect world, if I was still in a position to plan this out, how would you? Maybe it's just me that maybe there's not really a problem with that gate.
Well, I also think part of the problem with it as well is the color, because it's such a bright reddish color that isn't anywhere else in the picture. It's drawing a lot of attention to itself needlessly. I would either introduce that color throughout the rest of the image, or I would shift it to be more in line with the palette of the rest of the painting.
Yeah, I'd bring it somewhere. I think it is a lovely red, though. Like, I would try to get that in somewhere.
Yeah, and taking out those strong vertical lines helps the picture so much right off the bat.
Like, this is like a beautiful setup for a forest, but I would just cue the whole thing, maybe not even doing it like, but I'd just have it be warmer and then I'd lose that tree either way.
Or maybe the bridge that she's standing on is the same color, so that those reds kind of lead into the picture.
Bring the red on the borders of it,
Even the planks I would make warmer. Because right now I feel like the color of those planks is really competing with a lot. They're too bright, like they're too light. And then again, like the color just doesn't do anything for the picture.
So you do something more like that. Kind of like what I was trying to do, just getting that to feel like a little bit more of like a bridge.
Yeah.
Because like it has to go with the ropes anyway, to a degree. And then I'd probably actually just widen that a little bit, so I would move those so like they're right there, and maybe like the gate's right there, and then just simplify the background, like a lot. Yeah. Oh, you're making us work so hard on this. I'm thinking hard. I'm trying to come up with the best solution for you.
I feel like there's a lot of solutions, but right now it's kind of like there's some things that are working really nice, and then some things that are really throwing it off. So there's a lot of different directions you could go to introduce, solutions to these problems.
Yes.
And we're just offering a few of them.
Spitballing. And see, like, you can get like these subtle shifts, but as long as that's like the blue is still, like, that'll work really, really well. So you're just bringing in, I'm glazing lots of colors.
Yeah.
But see, and then pull that back, see, like that, and then you can pull, giving this figure even more, that room, right, to breathe. Something more like that. And like you wanted to do trees, maybe just have them be smaller or something, have them be in the frame.
That was the other thing, was they were so thick that they didn't even read as trees. But yeah, I like breaking up the shape as well like that.
There's another solution.
You could even have like one smaller tree go up in front of the shrine, so so it breaks up the shape a little bit, makes it a little more organic.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, there's some ideas for you to certainly, kind of contend with. It's definitely a tricky thing, and don't forget you can really soften a lot of the extra areas and things like that if you need to really kind of push things back a little bit and make them a little more subtle even. So like kind of bringing, not so much like that, but you can shift things and then warm it up a little. You got to create that. This here gets really, really flat, and so that's what I'm trying to add in more of that depth, regardless of how much it actually is, with just to create that separation. So just,
And I would also focus on using the shapes of the bushes and the trees to lead the eye through the piece, like to move the eye towards the main figure. Whereas before they were fighting against that, now they're starting to. Like if you see the bushes kind of like curve in towards her, you can have some of those trunks behind her like leading the eye down in V shapes towards her, to actually create just some nice visual flow.
Yeah. It's quite a journey with it. It's very crowded, it's very truncated, and distracted by lots of the ways that like the shapes are pulling us, like the lines. It's going. I try to simplify this and increase the depth. That's what this is about. All right, but I hope that helped you. I hope that helps somebody, and we'll keep going. My efforts. All right.
I thought this one was really fun. I like the idea of like the troll under the bridge interacting with the spirits. It was a very playful idea that I liked. I do think some of it is a little heavy-handed in the way that the spirits are shaped, that line that they create. I feel like there could be a lot more room for softness and nuance than it has.
Right, so similar to what we did way back, right? You take something like that and you got to squeeze more contrast and subtlety out of that, regardless of the method. And it's a tricky thing to do, but I would start by bringing light, in a sense, like out of that, kind of just bringing it down and then pulling selectively out little things to highlight to the level that you had.
Especially because, I mean, like looking at how much detail was put into drawing some of these, it's a
like
lot
this
of
is
thought,
insane.
so much
and the problem is, it's like very flat too.
Yeah, it's
because of that. So like find little areas in these guys and things that you can come back in and try to make as volumetric and three-dimensional as you can, just so they all read. Try to emphasize your overlaps with them. So that's overlapping that's or in this case, see if this is the back side of this guy, and here's like his little leg and his arm. You either got to darken around him or take the back side of that shape probably and then add like a multiplier or something, see, to the brush, see, like this, where you're just adding a little bit of that shading or something, and then you could continue with the glow effect, because it's just like a lot. And there's so much cool things with this.
And another thing too is, like, aside from the yellow fairies, the entire rest of the image is pretty much monochromatic. It's all purple, whether it's light, whether it's shadow. They're just, purple added with white or purple added with black, or dark grays. Yeah. And so I would suggest pushing the color range of the picture as a whole, because you have a really beautiful setup here where you can get a lot of range out of it. And I think that it would probably make sense to go with the towards the warms in the light, because it will unify with those. You don't need anything to be as yellow as the fairies, but if some of the lighter areas in the picture are just warmer and the shadows are cooler, it'll feel like it exists in the same universe.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring a little bit of balance to that. It's definitely, see, pull that. That's all purple. Okay. But trying to add more, particularly to these areas, so it doesn't feel like it was very quickly colorized.
Yeah,
you know.
I would suggest trying to add a little bit more like towards pinks and reds in the light area, and then blues, dark blues, and maybe even shifting towards greens, probably closer to like a bluish gray rather than a green in the shadows. We'll just add more depth to it.
What were you thinking of for the light areas? More,
More of like the pinky colors, like to
yeah.
push more towards warm colors in the light. And then the yellows of the fairy creatures won't fight as much because you had such a strong contrast between the warm fairies and then the purples of the rest of the painting.
Yeah. So, yeah, it needs that contrast, and then it needs to look finished. I think at some point, it's still quite rough,
Mm-hmm.
and like particularly like the foreground areas, and then like back here, regardless of what you do with with the overall colors, um, the brushwork is still very. It could use some. It could use a little bit of tinkering.
Yeah, I think he did some really cool things with like the gesture of the troll under the bridge is really nice. Like his arm
Yes.
coming forward into the water. Like you did such a great job with the characters, like storytelling wise, and just the gesture and movement of them. That really brings this whole scene to life. I do feel a little bit like the far side of the picture, away from the troll and the fairies, feels very empty. And even the way that the fairies stop right at the same curve of that bridge, it's like they just get cut off right there, as opposed to like continuing out across the image. So you get like this weird tangent where the fairies stop at the exact same arch of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I would carry that forward across to the edge of the canvas. I wouldn't. You can have them get smaller and farther away, but I wouldn't have it just stop. Um,
I'm trying to get the troll or
Sets of
the
glow.
goblin, to have like a little bit of a different tone, like
Yeah.
a local color than the actual bridge. Like they were kind of like the same, and I don't think he's intended to be kind of stone. So we gotta create that separation for him,
Mhm.
for that. See, it's separating that out. But yeah, like
Like
right
the
here.
green's a little jarring, but maybe if you went into like a bluish color, like he had kind of bluish skin with the lights glowing on him. Um,
All right, let's see. We'll pick that, and then just remove this. You said more blue?
yeah, because I feel like the green against the orangish yellow against the purple starts getting a bit too noisy.
Yeah, he does look really nice blue because it matches with the purple really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, trying to bring that out.
And then
I think
especially if you push some blues in the shadows, it'll feel more cohesive as well.
yeah, really cool piece though.
Yeah, the storytelling on this is just that's awesome. It was really good.
Yeah, so yeah, you were also thinking too because I was agreeing taking this and or not like that, but continuing.
Yeah,
The
it was like the way they stopped right where the bridge stopped was very interesting.
yeah, and
Um,
then maybe even circling back out like that, having them come out, having them come back in
mhm.
somewhere maybe. That would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool piece.
And I think, oh, just a quick note as well. If you make him blue, then we'll be able to see the hand a little better because his hand actually gets kind of lost in that swarm of fairies.
Mm.
And that's such an important part of the story that you really want to see it.
Albino Croc, really cool.
This is a really cool piece. I think one of the things that sold me on this piece as far as picking this one was how well wrapped the little boy was walking across that plank. Like just when you look at the amount of detail in like his posture, in his clothing, the shape design, it's fantastic.
Now I'm trying to push this color and this mood, in this piece. I definitely it does fall very flat in areas.
Yeah, I feel like this is one where the composition actually ends up not being like the idea of it is great and the scene is great. This like just river of spirits beneath him, but the composition doesn't do a lot to tell that story. And this is actually another one that I'm thinking might be much stronger as a vertical piece because there's just a lot
Yeah,
of dead space on the sides. And
there
really, it's about
definitely is.
the boy. And if we kind of just zoom in on that part, I think we can get a lot more mileage.
Yeah, and then I'd actually just add maybe a little bit more, to the
Yeah, the
bottom.
top and bottom.
either way, bringing that even down, like that.
Yeah, if it's just the bottom, it'll also create this feeling of him being higher up. It'll make it feel more precarious.
Not that like there really wasn't anything wrong, so to speak, with the last one, but I think it fits it better.
And it really plays up the figure, which is the strength of this piece.
Yes, it is. This definitely the strength. So you can even add like a little bit of a thing here and have gnarly branches.
Yeah, you could even have like a branch kind of arcing off to mirror the shape of that bridge.
Yeah, you could. These are really quick scribbles, of course, but you could definitely add a little thing there, and I think that'll look really great. And then you could take see that color, I'm trying to get it into that figure, and then I'd play up that glow just a little bit more to go with all the other things that I was doing. So like whatever, like a linear, I don't know, like a linear dodge or something like that with some of that bluish. Oh my god, it sounds chaotic up there, but you know what I mean, like playing up a little bit more of these colors.
The underglow.
Yeah, like a little bit more of that. But yeah, this is really dynamic.
Yeah. And I think another thing that's throwing me off about this piece is the two hands that are overlapping with the bridge, which I do like the idea of there being overlap, but the way that it's executed is actually kind of flattening it. So it's hard to have a sense of distance. So it's hard to know how far away these spirits are from the bridge. But when you have those hands coming up, but they're not really, the perspective of the hands don't look like they're reaching up towards the camera. They look like they're still straight. So if you could shift the perspective of the arms so they actually look like they're coming towards the camera instead of on the same plane as all the floating figures, it might help. Or if they're so close that they're sort of reaching up over it, maybe even to have one like physically arching over the bridge or something like that.
I'm trying to create a little bit more separation too, between all of that. Like the worms, like you got to get rid of these kind of worms that are inherently just in there, and to separate those out more from like the foreground. And I'm trying to do it by not overdoing it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I keep landing on that as well. I don't think necessarily less contrast is taking a lot of that out of there, but just got to create some kind of color difference. I'm gonna try to force in some kind of color. Maybe it's a little bit more green, for example, because these are a lot of reds and burgundies and stuff, so the greens will actually
more cyan, I think, because the spirits are already cyan, so if you want it to feel like that space is made up of them, I think that could help.
Use a little bit more. It's like it's a subtle thing, but I definitely think it'll kind of help add a lot of volume and create that pull that you'd want to with this. And then you still have enough room to really get in here and really push a blue, if you really want to even play up some of that going in as well. Like you could even desaturate the blue and really get in another range of that light, if you want to go that far. But it will look really great either way. Maybe just
I think for me the biggest thing still is those hands, because like so much of
the I would get rid of
stuff are drawn really interesting. The boy himself is really well designed, and the hands feel like they're not executed to the same skill level as the rest of the image. I would suggest even getting rid of them. I don't know that they're adding anything more.
No, they don't need to be there. I agree. All right, last up, Jennifer.
Oh, this was a really cool piece. I really loved the whimsical quality of it. And again, the unexpected choices of characters and setting.
Yeah, this got some great characters and stuff in it. What would you do?
I think one of the first things I'm noticing is how busy a lot of it is. I'm having trouble, like the hierarchy of things isn't coming clear. Like some of the noise is just overtaking the image.
It's busy. It is like visually, kind of busy for sure. And I'm trying to like add in a little bit of subtlety, with some of that.
I think some grouping and overlapping could help. Like that little spirit in front of the the moon that the squirrel is looking up to. I think if you shifted that over so it actually was overlapping the moon instead of tangenting in front of it, that could be something that helps reduce noise. It kind of visually groups those two shapes together. And then I think that there are some beautiful textures in the tail, but maybe it's edge control. Something about it like doesn't feel complete, and it starts just feeling like a very messy shape. It might even be the shapes around it, because I'm seeing like some like wispy, curvy shapes going into it that are not like behind the tail above that big pink shape. There's just this like curve going into the tail. So getting rid of things like that might help.
It is noisy. It is noisy for that reason. You see, I'm trying to group like all of this. I think the key with some of this is just grouping it.
Yeah.
Like, I think you either gotta maybe just go. I don't know. It's hard to tell with this one. I would probably maybe try to. I guess instinctively I'd go actually, even though it's a night scene. For this, I would say maybe try going a little bit lighter in the background to get a little more, or definitely reducing the contrast.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go lighter, because there's so many light things in the squirrel and the spirits and the moon that I think the darks are going to be important to help frame it.
So I'm just adding. Okay, so now I'm going to select the inverse, right, and then go do the same thing, but like, see, it's a matter of grouping, like you said. How you group things, ultimately, it's not going to matter, but it definitely needs organization of these components. And then, like you also mentioned here, like cutting out some of the filler shapes, the busy shapes, like see, like this, simplifying that. Like, see, it doesn't need, particularly originally, right, you have this shape, it's all overlapping to a very kind of busy degree. Like, you can lose this, see, and it's not compromising.
Yeah, because the shapes weren't actually adding anything. They weren't helping the visual flow or making the shape of the squirrel more interesting. It was just fighting with the shapes and adding noise.
And now you can take, elements, see, like this, these warmer or these higher parts, right? I'm going to just go to overlay, but I'm going to base it off the effects, kind of in there, but I'd say, not like that. Give me the airbrush. But like, see, I'm trying to play up that color, just like a little bit, so we can really feel their effects, like on the creature either way, or on a lot of these areas, like that, and then so you get a little bit of yellow, see, in there and then there, and then I think that, see, like, we can start to really feel that the glow, right, emitting on the tree a little bit. And then if these are glowing or if they're not glowing, I think right now they're just kind of like,
I almost want to see them be the same pinkish colors or an orangey yellow kind of color. The white feels so flat and lifeless compared to the whimsical quality of this painting that I feel like they should be a pretty color.
No, I that's exactly what I was getting to, for the same reason. Again, you could pick the color ultimately. I don't think it's going to matter, but they should have some kind of, element of life.
It could even be like a teal color or the same pink color. It doesn't matter, but they should feel whimsical. And
then you can get maybe like do a little bit better job than I'm doing here, but like actually vignette the figures. Right underneath there, Are there figures underneath there? I'm also trying to figure out. Like select wherever they are. Like, these are their hands. This is the face. This is the hands. Right here's the feet. Like, if there's little figures in there, you can definitely get them be the source.
And they don't all have to be super clear, but just a little bit of an impression can go a long ways to making them have more interest.
And then you can play up some of that light. At least I thought it was going to.
See, and that's actually why I would be inclined to make the background more dark, because then you can play up more of the light reflecting off all these interior shapes in the foreground against the darker background.
Oh my god. Okay, so you can You could still like bring that in, either way.
Hmm.
But like having these are going to be a lot of dark shapes. That's why I'm creating that separation.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it is a huge improvement.
But very cool, very creative. Thank you for submitting.
And it's like always, like, there's multiple solutions to the same
Yes.
problem.
We're back. So these are our favorite ones. We both were agreeing. Malty, however you want to say your name. I'm sorry, I'm terrible. This is our favorite for sure. It's
Yeah, this was the one that both of us, like, from the get-go were like, yeah, we have to pick this one to be in the video, and we were both like, yeah, that's our winner for the challenge.
it's really as equally creative as it is technically executed, and I think it's really fantastic for it. And then these two are our runner-ups: yours, Yara, and
Yeah.
Agnesia.
I,
Probably best.
I felt like the storytelling in this one, like the gesture of the trolls and the fairies, like there's just so much in there. It's just such an interesting piece that I just really feel like it stood above.
And
And then,
yours, I wish I painted. I wish this was my idea. Why couldn't it have been my idea? Because I would have loved to paint this fully and have this be in my own body of work. I love it. It charmed the hell out of me. So
yeah, I think
congrats.
charming, that's the word that keeps coming to my head. It's just so charming and it's just so fun to look at. Really cool piece.
Congrats, everybody. Stay tuned after this. I'll give my 2 cents on the remainder pieces as well as drop the information on the next challenge.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and folks, for the remainder of the entries, I'm going to spit out my quickest, most purest kind of thoughts that I initially think of just to kind of move these through. So, bad concept art. This is lovely. This has great lighting, a nice kind of mood to it, and it's super creative. I would adjust the scale of these trees. They kind of feel really short, really kind of stocky, and they feel awkwardly kind of placed all throughout this area. Maybe just, because you'd have to like really make them a lot larger or just simply remove them. This also feels weird too that there's like a village here, there's a village here, there's clouds. It's almost like maybe there should be buildings up here, maybe overlap. They're just kind of, it's awkwardly staged, I should say. Nicholas, this is really cool. I think it just needs more polish overall. You get some nice, very clear shapes, and all down here, and interesting lighting, and that's a very kind of creepy vibe to it, which I also like. I would just kind of continue to push some of the rendering and some of the shapes. Look up a fella named Jason Shire. He does some really stylistic art, but I think your brushwork needs a little bit more spice to it. Hey Justin, this is cool. This has lovely colors, and the composition feels awkward in the sense that, okay, we have a bridge up here, we have buildings up here, we have clouds up here, we have figures up here, but nothing below the halfway mark is happening in the bottom half whatsoever, and nothing to an extent is even happening all over. I mean, for a piece that is seemingly about these figures and there's little context to establish anything important going on with the bridge, it just seems like, why not just make a piece with the characters where they really fill that frame? So just consider what you're trying to say and figure out how you can really use framing to get that idea across. Scarlett, this is cool. So this was the original here, right? You had, see, that's cool. I actually like those. Like, these look, way too unfinished, and they're not working there at all, but I definitely love the idea, if you had the technical skill to pull it off, these spirited armor soldiers, or maybe even an army. Like, I don't know, it's just, I think that's really cool. This line in the background seems really weird that it's there. Like, clearly the moments about this seems more of like some kind of cosmos line, and that it feels a little out of touch for what this piece is. And then the mountains also feel very distracting. They're just too sharp, they're too derivative here. It needs work, the background, in that regard, but overall I love the creativity here, and I like kind of where it's going. Rittengar. Oh, okay. This is really fun. Again, this definitely has some awesome ingenuity into it here. I like the mood for sure. Focus wise, it's a little all over because the whole thing is cool. There's no really warm colors in there, but it's also just light dark, light dark, light dark. I'd still try to find a way to emphasize environment and group shapes to make it more impactful here. And also maybe giving these things, which seem to be like ghosts or spirits, they need more work. This seems like an easy cop-out way to not really actually do a little bit more. They need design work, I would say. All of these could benefit from more design, more details and things. But yeah, really cool. Yeah, I like the depth. I like the lighting on this for sure. This is cool. I don't know if this is 100% necessary, having like a planet out there and all this. Maybe just having a normal kind of sky. But I'd add more blue into down here. Maybe bring in a little bit more atmosphere. Yeah, these should be a little bit cooler overall. There's weird kind of color shift with the temperatures going on, and this feels really underfinished. But other than that, I think it's definitely heading in a really nice direction. Hey, Radio. This is interesting. I'm not sure the entire story here. This just seems more of like it's a dragon piece rather than being more about a spirit bridge and stuff. But the composition's pretty nice. I think this building, this mountain kind of divides things up just a bit too much. I just either have one or the other, but maybe lose this whole mountain back here. I can't see what's going on here, Crunchy Nut. This is way too dark. You like dump black over the entire painting, and I there's just nothing to really feast our art. You got to lighten this up. You got to learn to balance and utilize, shadow and darker and neutral colors. This is just, it's black and it's black, and it's not interesting for that. So I'd just say do lighting studies. Go to what is it, like Map Crunch, set up still lifes. You got to practice how light works. Similarly with you, Cyan, there's a lot of devoid space that's just filled with uninteresting blacks and shadows. Guys, shadows is where color parties. It's not light. You got to make your shadows really, really work. I have several videos, of course, on YouTube on Do Your Shadow Suck. I recommend that series for a lot of you. But overall, the idea is really cool, Cyan. These things are really creepy, but again, feel really unfinished. Like if I didn't assign this challenge as being a spirit bridge, I wouldn't know that these are spirits. You gotta give them a glow. You gotta make them kind of have a little bit more of a presence. Are they threatening? Are they not threatening? Are they kind? This needs more of that narrative. Yeah, this is nice, Jefferson. This has got that nice delicate lighting. This is how you do darker tones and have them be interesting. But yeah, this is cool. I like this a lot. I think like a little more rendering in here since it's so close up on the figure, and maybe build up a little more context of this bridge or this dock. It just seems kind of a little more forced. It seems like there needs one more narrative element in here to really tie it all together. This is interesting too, Vedikori. I think maybe a little bit more of a literal bridge in this sense would kind of help tie a lot of this together. But value-wise, grouping-wise, with the structure, it does need a little bit more. It has a very unfinished, unpolished look to a lot of it. Like you can see the stamped brushes just kind of going, all over the place. But, one sec. Yeah, sorry. It just needs a little bit more refinement and a little more planning. The shapes in it, just like having this tree directly down the middle, having this tree wedged up against the side, having this tree wedged against the side. You got to work, I'd say, the most on composition. The storytelling is there. I think it works really well overall. But yeah, it's the composition that really kind of hurts us the most. This is cool. This I actually really, really like. I think this still feels a little unfinished. Some of these plants feel a little bit too large compared to these. There's nothing kind of going on up here, which it makes me seem like we should see more of the top of the bridge, or I don't know. The top of it gets weird considering how nice some of this is coming through down here, and you'll have to get a little more precision with the water and separating that ship. Like the water should be darker, the ship should have that glow to it. So a little bit with the lighting, this kind of feels a little flat in places. The perspective seems a little like this feels large, this feels too small. It just really feels unfinished, but the overall actual concept is really nice. So thank you for submitting that, Alyssa. This is interesting. It's definitely hurting in the darker tones. It's just way too black in a lot of places. It should have a lot of variety in there, and the texture needs a lot of work as well. Like, you've painted the stone the same way as this drapery, the same way as the hair, the same way as the skin and the clouds. You got to look at and study materials very, very closely to kind of pull something like this off. Nailing the lighting will also start to help this out quite a bit. But yeah, really kind of cool mood and tone. This is interesting, Tiberius. Really cool, really nice referencing here. I actually like this a lot. I definitely think it needs a little more rendering here and there. But this is really cool, though, creatively. I'd say keep going with it. I like the mood also in this. I think it works really well. I think more magic effects kind of going on here and more use of that direct light will also give it more of a punch. Be advice. So this is cool. I actually like this quite a lot. It just, again, the shadows and the lighting, I definitely continue to push a little more in there, just playing a lot more ambient light and then getting into actually rendering a lot of this out. It does have a very rushed sort of look to it, and the materials have a very flat look to it as well. See, in here this texture comes off really heavy-handed and it's a little distracting. I'm a little uncertain on what's kind of going on, and you'll see a lot of very sharp, crisp detail shapes in the light compared to in the shadow. See that you have the light shape as one big simple shape, and then a lot of smaller details and marks in the shadows. It almost should be reverse in that regard. And I'd also, you have a little bit of a moon and pinks in here. You could definitely bring in a lot more of that atmospheric color throughout the scene as well. And you also have this very unique element up here in the tree that I feel like you could do more, whether it's kind of glowing or emitting some kind of a light. It definitely seems like it could be doing a bit more overall. But yeah, keep going with it. Hey, Art Boyo. This is interesting here. I think part of it for me is the style clashing with some of the aesthetics going on, meaning like you have so much information going on down here, but a lot of this is just hazed and lost. Like, this effect should probably be almost exclusively reserved for the background here, because this is pretty much main foreground type of action, and it's all kind of getting lost in how this is kind of overlaid on top of that, which is a shame. But other than that, the idea itself is really unique. But I think the addition of these two elements here as spirits and with the feet and the bridge itself, a lot of these just feel really kind of disjointed in their current state. Like I get, like I'm connecting a lot of these dots as what's kind of going on here, but like I'd have to think to myself too, if I also didn't come up with that challenge idea, I'd have no idea what kind of going on and how these things actually relate. So conceptually there's some things I'd probably rework, but otherwise it does have a nice kind of rendering to it, and the drawing itself on the characters and stuff is pretty nice. It does have a nice sense of style with it. This is like really cool, John, and I like actually the stark colors and the red and the white sort of aesthetic here. This is really kind of creepy, really kind of cool. I want to say with this, maybe I do more with these shapes, make them a little more overlapping, a little larger in some instances. I do think that's a good idea. These boards feel too thin and too straight. Like, there's something stiff about this walkway. And then something about how these folds are rendered up here definitely needs a little bit more work. It's too linear, they're too straight. But other than that, I'd probably add a little more atmosphere in the sky and background over here. But yeah, really cool, definitely creative. Ben Giles, how are you doing? All right, so this is cool. I always like the idea. Again, there is a lot. Thematically, it kind of missed a bit for me because it just feels like a civilization on top of some ruins, and this doesn't kind of come off as a bridge. It doesn't necessarily celebrate the idea of spirits as much, and even so, this is probably how I would do a first kind of sketch of this idea, because it's like a really cool idea in itself, like all this over here, but it's also probably one of the most boring camera angles to sell this as an idea, like a very linear sort of one point sort of perspective. I think there's a much more dynamic way to show this idea. All right, but otherwise, I conceptually I actually do like it as something unrelated to the actual challenge. Yeah, this is interesting to interact. I think this, for me, really just needs a lot of finish and polish. It just, it has a good sense of movement to it. I do like that, but some of the forms in here largely fall flat because it's hard to see them in a three-dimensional sort of way based on their lighting. The water looks really unreferenced, and again, some of the brushwork just kind of gets a little too all over the place, and this character doesn't read separately from the ground. A lot of this kind of, I get it a little pushed more into the scene and then separate that out a little bit. But yeah, really cool pursuit scene. Hey Martin. Yeah, this is cool. I like the composition of this. I like how this kind of flows out over and around. Problem is, if this is a spirit, or if this is kind of an important sort of character, it's the same color as the background, as the grass. It just doesn't read, at all. And having the character running out of the comp here, having this character missing the bottom, this I think works compositionally a lot better without the characters, essentially. And the railing feels a bit too big or thick, and it kind of, like, I think if the scale of the scale of some of this stuff was smaller, I think it'd be a lot better. But watch the brush strokes. See, this is very muddy, right? Very messy. There's no control in regards to the shapes and how clear some of this stuff is. So it would need good amount of cleanup, I think, to really kind of hit it all the way for me. But yeah, keep going with it, because again, I love the idea. I love the arrangement of a lot of these things. Just a bunch of little tweaks, will definitely kind of help that out. Hey Kif here, this is cool. I like it. It almost feels perhaps a little too derivative of this when you actually see them side by side. So actually I'm gonna probably pretend I'm not seeing this at all, but either way, do you see the control going on and some of the brushwork going on with some of the shapes? This definitely needs that. See, it gets very, and this is something I'm seeing not just with Jiris, but a majority of these pieces that were not only chosen but not chosen, is that the brushwork itself tends to get a little lost, and I would try more lasso edges, more sharper brushes around the edges to kind of get that clarity to pop. See, kind of like you did here. I think that works really well. But almost probably too much space on the sky. See, a lot of this is empty, unused space, and this is kind of using the verticality very, very well. So and since this is a vertical comp, it probably should use a little bit more of that. But otherwise, very cool. I like the punch of red in there. Hey, Joshua. This is cool. Again, with the composition and the brushwork with this, I think that's what's setting it down too much for me in regards to choosing it for something like this. See, a lot of this, half the composition here isn't being utilized whatsoever. It's all kind of truncated and fit into this bottom right hand side. I think it could have been utilized quite a bit more with more kind of planning going into that. So you have some good edge control coming in like here and here, but like beyond like this line here and beyond like some of that line, a lot of it it looks like a color sketch. We're probably going to choose the finished looking art for most of this as much as we can. This is cool. I actually like this composition a lot. This blue here gets blown out too much, and it's overtaking a lot of back here. It's bleeding into this shape, and it's also the same color as your spirits. And then there's these elements down here which are cool, but are again also kind of competing with a lot of this. So for this, it's a little bit of the color and a lot of the value that's kind of competing against itself for attention in too many places. So I would just do what I did with a lot of the chosen entries and group and organize many of the sections and components of this. Tanda, this has actually got a lot of nice clarity to it. You know, edges aren't pretty much a problem in this for the most part. This seems a little too out of focus. Like, I get what you were trying to do with the depth of blur and the depth of field sort of thing going on here, but it feels too far. It feels like this should be actually in the frame, you know, quite a bit more. And again, you have this building side that kind of comes up all the way up that side there. I think I try to remove that, bring this into focus. But I mean, this is wild too. I almost wondering what's kind of going on. What's the relationship between, like, what's this creature doing? Because it's turning an actual bridge into a creature, but like for what? I tend to start to run into too many questions, I guess, with this. Like, is this a regular person? Is this some kind of demon person? Is, you know, like, what's the story going on here? All right. Zuzia, this is cool. See, very good shape control in this for the most part, which I like. They're not the most appealing shapes all around, but you do have that control with it, which is, again, something I've been looking for. The lighting in this kind of hurts it the most. It's very, very static when it comes to the lighting. There is very little. It's mostly neutral, honestly. It doesn't feel too cool. It doesn't feel too warm. But it doesn't feel as dynamic enough to pull off a neutral composition. There's not enough subtlety, you know, kind of changing. So I would probably bring in a bit more warm tones for this and balance them with some of the cools in these areas. But otherwise, it's definitely very interesting, and I'm not sure what is going on with this character bending over here. Again, the story and the relationship kind of going on, the staging and the posing these characters, I'm not sure what message it's trying to deliver exactly. I would try to simplify that. Hey sis, this is pretty cool. Prompt Spirit Bridge. So you did a lot of great planning work, you know, in here and things like that. Yeah, nice colors. I think it's, for me, the rendering and some of the depth here feel like it's kind of like a weird format, being a square, and you're really trying to fit a lot into a small space. I'd widen it quite a bit, maybe double the length, double the width on that. Remove things like this that are just absolutely crowding this composition, and then getting a little bit of depth in there. I think that'll look, you know, really, really nice. But yeah, keep going. The light on the wood here, it's getting blown out to like a white. It make it like a deep, warm red, like an orange almost. So some of the lighting in this is falling a little bit flat. I'd put a little bit more detail up in here too. It does feel too simple. And then I probably wouldn't have him facing away from the character like that. I'd get more into the acting on this and either get him stumbling on the ground or do something a little bit more with that. It just kind of feels, I don't know, slightly disjointed. Hey Seal, yeah, this is cool. This is very similar to a few other ones that we were really kind of tossing around with. I actually like this a lot. You have some good balance going on. I'd probably do a little bit more neutrals to cooler tones in here, with the only cooling accents being like these characters here. But yeah, it's fun. It's playful. I like that a lot. I'd simplify some of the shapes kind of going around in there and just continue to keep on pushing it. It also seems weird too that the trees go very, very tall with no branches at the lower, bottom, and mid sections, and they only have branches up here on the top. It seems like to fill the forest out, they'd need to be full trees. But yeah, really cool. I think these guys might need a little bit more, you know, detail or clarity, but yeah, I like it. Same with this one too, Kara. I really like this one a lot, actually. And I think it has a lot of the elements that some of the others didn't, and personally I would have chosen this one, but I got overruled and we had to compromise. But I like it. I like the characters, really well drawn. You have good clean shapes, nice color. I think it's fantastic. I think maybe like pushing this part further back into the background to make this feel like it's more foreground and midground in this background. I would do that. Same with over here. It gets a little flat up in these areas, but other than that, I probably would add, I would take some of the white out of the water, put more blues in there, and more greens, maybe a few stones with that, just a little bit more there. But overall, I like it quite a bit. Thank you for your submission. And Pete, yeah, this is cool. This is definitely a different kind of unique take on that. The weird thing is with this, for me, it doesn't seem to be like a lot going on. It's just like, it's almost like a weird sort of shot where it's like, okay, this is something that's happening here, and this is the most important aspect of it. But all the same, you have really nice clean shapes, rendering. But some of the scale, like, I don't know if these are like mini spirits, or because these are loading bays, that would probably infer that that's like a truck size, but I guess these feel a little small comparatively so. And then there's weird perspective going on here that's inconsistent with this stuff. And then I think it's just like, I'm not sure to the context of this. So they're spirits, but they built wood on top of concrete, and it doesn't feel like the wood is constructed enough. Like you need more research if you're going to make that idea work, and the perspective, again, in other areas are a little wonky. But yeah, very cool. Thank you for submitting. And so, folks, the next challenge appropriately is going to be winter delivery. That'll be due January 20th. So what are the components and things we're specifically looking for here? It could be a concept, it could be an illustration, but it needs to showcase some kind of delivery. Any kind of delivery. You can think outside the box if you want. You can be quite literal, as long as the storytelling and messaging is pretty clear. Should take place in a winter setting. Alright, and it probably needs at least 1 or 2 characters, whatever the case may be, delivering something. So that's the other kind of, that's the action, what it needs, and of course the setting. So have fun. Any kind of lighting will do, any kind of style. Take care.